Uh, yeah, so let's talk about this. So I'm going to actually kind of talk about my journey into like NFT based game. So before that, like I can kind of speak that like who am I basically. So I think like this slide has been like consumed by Dani itself, so I don't have to kind of explain much. But yeah, I previously worked as a soft like during my IIT days itself, I was kind of mingling around with a lot of designers on the campus, and uh, I'm actually my dad is an also artist, so that sort of becomes an additional sort of input for me in terms of entering into design. And yeah, since then I've been kind of inclined toward design for a long. I mean, like been hanging out with people who have been kind of doing designs. Then there are like a lot of startups that were happening around, and you would always get a chance to kind of go out there and kind of do UI UX design. And that was like really helpful for me. Through that, I kind of got to know a few people when I was kind of doing my job at Samsung. I realized like development is probably not my calling. I probably should like kind of shift back to design. Since then, I've been kind of working as a full-time designer only. So I worked at Asan's House, led their team, have kind of built their team from like 2 people to kind of 8, 9 people and stuff. In 2020 October, I kind of left that company in order to kind of explore my entrepreneur side kind of thing. Been exploring healthcare and stuff as well, and a lot. And eventually, in last year, November in 2020, when I was actually exploring electronic medical records, which are a great use case of blockchain in in healthcare. So at the same point of time, my previous colleagues, like co-founders of the previous startups and everybody, like they were also working into blockchain, and they were like kind of figuring out, and they had kind of come up with this blockchain gaming sort of domain. And I mean, like for them, like for like someone they wanted someone kind of artistic or designing kind of person on their team. I was like, okay, I can kind of jump ship now and kind of join with them. So this is how like One World Nation, a gaming company, started. So what is essentially One World Nation? So One World Nation is a NFT based gaming platform. I'll explain about what are NFT based gaming in a future slides itself. Yeah, go on, Dani.
Vaibhav, we are still seeing your title slide, designing for NFT based games. Are you? Yeah, now it's moving.
Oh, it was not moving before.
No.
Okay, cool. Uh, no issues. Um, yeah, so this is so basically One World Nation is NFT based gaming platform, and we are building basically cryptoverse of NFT. So what we realize that like any other new technology that comes into the market gets picked up really quickly by gaming sector, right? And gaming has been like at the forefront of all of these things before as well, like AR, VR, like all the technologies that we kind of talk about in the real world. Uh, and yeah, and then we realized there were kind of really good news around like crypto gaming. There are like a lot of different use cases, and that's where like we realized that okay, we can kind of target the audience which are sort of have a decent enough understanding of crypto. They are also interested in kind of gaming and stuff, and are interested in kind of making money out of it. So that's where we kind of made this like cryptoverse of NFTs, where uh, we have kind of made characters which are kind of depicting a lot of crypto coins and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, so let's talk about like what are NFT based games first, and that can I think a lot of you guys are here to kind of probably interested into NFTs and games design and all of these things. So probably I thought I can kind of include those things as well. So imagine you're kind of playing a racing game with limited number of cars, right? For example, Need for Speed or any road rash sort of game that we have played in the past. Uh, if like the set of cars are limited, that means like you would have to kind of buy that car to kind of play the game, or you have to kind of hold that asset of the car to play the game. Eventually you can kind of play the game well, you can improve on your skills, and as you kind of improve on your skill, the car also kind of gets upgraded. Like you will try to add like new colors to it, you will try to add new engine to it, and eventually like that car becomes so much powerful that you can sell it to another player who can start at a higher level than starting at level 0, right? This is very interesting set of sort of evolution of gaming that has been happening. I've covered it into the next set of design slides as well. But yeah, so this is how, like, previously we started with like arcade games where you used to kind of pay, insert coin into the machine and used to play. Then there was like, then there were games where we used to kind of buy CDs or buy cassettes for our PlayStations and everything. Now, if you kind of look at PUBG or like similar kind of premium sort of games which are there on mobile nowadays, you can play to a certain level for free, but to buy some maps, to buy some kind of asset, you have to kind of pay upfront, right? And all of that money kind of goes into the pocket of the software development company itself. So that's where like evolution of NFT based games becomes like really much important, because although like a part of the, like, I mean, 3-4%, 5% share of the transaction is kind of kept by the company, but a player can kind of earn from whatever the skills that they have acquired. So if I am a good racer, I am a good racing car player, I can upgrade that car and kind of sell it in the market, and that kind of gives me a lot of income and stuff. Yeah. So what we are going to talk about today. So when I was kind of looking at like what all things I have been doing since past 8 to 9 months, I realized that I can kind of break down into two major parts. One is kind of how did you kind of go about building the NFTs, and second is about like few things that we learned from the designing of the game itself, like game mechanics and stuff. So probably I'll be rushing through like art side of the design and kind of UX side of the game design really quickly through these slides. But feel free to kind of ask detailed questions. Feel free to kind of ask, whatever that kind of comes to your mind. If you have any kind of parallel thoughts, parallel questions, that's also fine. Yeah, so let's start with building NFTs itself, right? So first we kind of talk about, when you talk about game, NFT based game, you need to kind of start off with some sort of NFT, some sort of characters. If it's a racing game, you have to kind of start up with the cars or the anything as well. If it's a character level game, it's a kind of first person shoot game, you have to kind of start with the characters, arenas, what the storyline and everything. So like looking at the audience that probably we have today, I can probably talk about, like, as a designer or as a creative person on the team, probably these all things, like these are the precursor of the character design that you'll be end up doing. So there are all of these kind of things, like what are the core game mechanics, like whether it's a racing game, whether it's a very casual sort of match 3 sort of game, Candy Rush and all of these things, like whether it's a Subway Surfer sort of game, right? So if you kind of break down into like those small games as well, like in Subway Surfer, essentially what you are doing is like there is a guy who kind of trying to do a graffiti on trains, right? And then that person will kind of, there is a cop that's kind of chasing that person, right? So that's the sort of lore that the thing has, and that's why like all the characters, all the artworks that you see into that game are of that childish nature, of that graffiti wala nature as well. There is a lot of punk elements into the entire thing, right? So that's how you kind of connect the character, connect the environment and all. Like if you talk about Candy Crush and everything, I think Candy Crush has a story of where like there is a king or something who wants to enter into some kind of palace where there are a lot of candies, and like there is journey and everything involved. Yeah, so it's important. There are like 4 or 5 things that you kind of really focus on in this space, which is like what are the core mechanics, what are the sort of game assets, characters you want. Do you want cars for the racing game, or do you want characters for that like first person shoot sort of game? Do you want anything else like crystals and everything? What are the motivations of these characters? Like, for example, if I'm kind of building a game for, let's say, Mario and stuff, right? So what will be the point system? Like there is a mushroom in the Mario, right? Or there are like plants in the Mario, like whatever that person eats, then because of that it gains powers. Like there is a coin system in the Mario because like that character might want to kind of have money in his pocket and stuff. And then the other part is like how players will kind of feel connected to these characters as well. So funny story, we actually wanted to kind of start off with some sort of non-living characters itself. We were kind of going for when you're talking about NFT based game, we were kind of looking at making it out of crystals or something. but eventually we realized that living things are something that players connect a lot to. If it's sort of a pet-like animal or pet-like characters that you can see, like there is a huge amount of connect, or there is a huge amount of affinity toward games that kind of build up really really fast. Then the next thing comes as like building NFTs. You kind of start developing these characters and characters or artworks or assets, whatever that you have on your team, right? One of them being sort of you can kind of have a look at these characters on the right hand side. So just to give a brief about our game, in our game we have characterized a lot of these crypto coins and stuff. So if you have been into crypto or in general have an idea about crypto, there is a coin called Ethereum, there is a coin called Solana. Ethereum is a coin which has been kind of steadily growing, and it has been like very bare, bareback structure of the backbone structure of the entire smart contract and all of these things, right? And for that you would need some sort of character which is inspired from a you know herbivorous sort of animal, right? And that's why like you can see a lot of ship-like or cattle-like structures over here. But at the same point of time, Solana is something that was kind of built in order to kind of um, tackle Ethereum itself. They wanted to kind of destroy the monopoly of Ethereum and everything. So we wanted to kind of give it a little bit of a wilder look, sort of a carnivorous look. So you will see a lot of fox-like, or they're having all these spikes and everything. So that's how you kind of end up developing the character, right? How does this kind of character develop into the final artistic thing? How does this kind of art kind of blends with your UI? All of these decisions you need to kind of take during this series. Yeah. Another thing that is like probably the most important and very different when you're kind of building characters for any game. It's not just kind of NFT based game, but for any sort of game in Web 2 as well, is that like you want to have some sort of modularity in your art, right? So whenever you I mean, like, what sort of body parts a character will have? Like, will they have wings? Will they have, tail? Like, how they will kind of be walking? And these sort of technical things kind of start coming into the picture. So, even if you're kind of interested into kind of art NFTs or all of those things as well, there is a lot of uh, generative art that happens nowadays, right? Where you specify 4 or 5 parameters, and through that a character kind of emerges. There as well, like you need to make sure that you are creating elements which are distinct from each other, but yet very very much similar. So as you can see over here, like I can probably give you example from the art that we created ourselves. There are like 6 7 body parts that you can see over here, and like each of them, like there are like different sort of wings that are there are tail, everything. If you can see, these are the 2 type of characters that exist in our game, right? Their body although remains the same, but we have make sure that their head becomes little bit different from each other, so that they form a sort of one species, but they are kind of in a way different from each other. So they form a one family, one sort of characters. Yeah, I think there is echo from someone.
Yeah, Manjari, can you mute yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so these are all the technical details that are involved while you're creating the game itself, while you're creating the game character itself. At the same point of time, there will be a lot of okay. Yeah, again, there are when you kind of go and at this same period of time, like there are like there are product managers or game product managers which are working on the similar part on their side, where like what will the wings do in a particular game, what will the arms do in a particular game, what will the tail do in a particular game, how should be the point structure of the system. Like all of these things are happening parallelly at the same point of time. If you want to discuss those things, we can discuss those as well. As like we were a small team and I was involved in all those aspects as well. But like talking from specifically from art point of view, this is how probably the flow goes on. Yeah, so before we kind of jump into this, I would like to ask, like, what do you think is a software in which like these things were created? Like, do you think was it Photoshop, Illustrator? Like, well, like if someone wants to kind of unmute themselves and answer this.
The name Blender.
Okay. Anyone else want to answer?
Maybe Photoshop.
Okay. Okay.
Maya,
Okay.
3D Max. But this
Anyone else? So there is one more question. Do you think these were vector images or raster images? Like if you guys have an idea uh, around like, I think most of you guys are designers. It's
Obviously,
like
raster.
these are obvious. Okay, you're thinking these are rasters. Okay. Uh, so like this was something which was surprising for me when I kind of went for it. So all of these were kind of designed in Figma itself, and all of these are vectors. And we have used masking and gradients to its kind of best like usage. And this is where I sort of struggled while I was doing hiring at that point of time, because like a lot of artists are kind of sticking to the tools that they have been kind of using for a longer period of time. Although I mean, when it comes to gaming or when it comes to such digital things, then you have to kind of be in a limitation of the tech stack itself. How can you kind of reduce the size of the characters, or how can you reduce the size of any sort of files that you're generating out of the system? When you kind of think about raster images, their like file size kind of grows to an exponential level. So you want to kind of stay, minimal, closer to the, uh, closer to the vectors itself. So that's where we kind of, so all of these, beautiful textures and everything you are kind of seeing over here, all of these are nothing but there is no blending used as well. It's just like kind of pure play of good coloring, good gradations, and yeah. So it's particularly kind of possible. Uh, and at the same point of time, the artists need to kind of have a flexibility around the tools. That kind of opens up a lot of opportunity. Uh, During this particular stage, I faced a lot of issue while hiring, and this because of the similar reasons as well, where when jumping from one software to another was sort of becomes a little bit difficult for an artist to ensure that probably, and these are just kind of my sort of opinions at the same point of time experiences. If you want to kind of ensure that you are kind of durable for a longer period of time, uh, making sure that you are not dependent on particular tool kind of helps you grow a little bit more faster. So yeah, so these were like 4 points that I wanted to kind of discuss about NFTs themselves, like how we kind of arrived up like at our NFTs, and what were the kind of different steps that we took to kind of make them. Next is all about probably more into UX, about like how user behavior is there, what are the sort of different mentalities are there and stuff. Right. So as I kind of explained previously as well, the play to earn sort of era that's kind of coming up, where you buy a game asset, you use it, you upgrade it, and you kind of then sell it on a marketplace, on a secondary marketplace, and earn from it, right? So in a way, game becomes an economy where you can kind of leverage your skills to earn more money. And that's how like you have been seeing a lot of esports sort of system. You have been seeing a lot of real money gaming that has been kind of that has been evolving in India for a long period of time. Talk about Dream 11, talk about MPL, Mobile Premier League, and Zoopy, and all of these companies are kind of minting a lot of money, and there are like huge number of players who are playing it on a daily basis. Uh, and that's where kind of crypto comes into the picture. Crypto helps you to build economy. Essentially, blockchain helps you to build economy really, really seamlessly. Uh, there are like a lot of things because that are very much useful in gaming when it comes to blockchain. People are able to see, like, entire system is transparent. People are able to see if there is no scam into the system, and as well, people are able to own and kind of prove their ownership to their assets. There is nothing that a gaming company can do to kind of take that asset away randomly, and everything. Uh, and at the same point of time, because of the way ecosystem is being developed, everything is becoming more about earning than playing, right? So if you develop a good economy on a decent game mechanics, look at like probably Dream 11. Like fantasy gaming has been there for a very, very long period of time, but Dream 11 was sort of the reinvention of all of this, where you can kind of put the money on the team that you have selected of the cricket players, and then you can kind of earn from the league wherever the leaderboard you kind of starts, right? So this is how like people are becoming more calculative. People are kind of exploring these arenas for their earning as well, for their day-to-day earning, sort of side business sort of thing. And that kind of makes these users really, really kind of different from each other. So when we kind of started off, we thought that we'll be kind of involving gamers only into the system. But at the same point of time, there are like different sort of people who are coming into the system who wants to kind of earn from this ecosystem. The first ones are like F2P players. They are like free to play players, as they are called. These are the old school players who have been kind of playing bigger games. They have been kind of playing Call of Duty and all those sort of games just for the fun itself, right? And there are like I mean, just talking about these terms, there are whales, non-whales. I mean, few of them have been kind of spending a lot of money on this market, where they have been kind of preparing their PCs, they have been buying the merchandises and everything. While there are other players who just buy one CD and kind of play it for like 2-3 years or so and just happy with it. There are players who religiously kind of buy upgraded versions of the games every now and then. So these are sort of people who come there for just for the fun of the play most of the time and kind of invest money because of the same reason. At the same point of time, there are capital providers that have been kind of introduced because of the play to earn ecosystem. And this is the entire breed of different users you have to deal with. Like previously it was not there, but right now, to explain it very, very kind of in a seamless manner, people are kind of think about it as a racing game where I am going and buying like say 100 cars for car NFTs or whatever the game asset is, and I'm kind of distributing that between 100 players, and I have contract with them that like however points they earn, however kind of earnings they have from game, I can get a particular share, right? So I'm kind of solving the initial capital requirement for all these gamers. At the same point of time, I am earning money from all of these things. I'm not really a player, but at the same point of time, I'm invested into the economy of the game itself, and that is the entirely different subset. And rise of esports has given rise of guilds as well, where all of these players are on a payroll of a particular guild. So there are like a lot of gaming guilds out there, and people actually go there for a job, who are coming to your system. They are playing the game, but all the asset ownership, all the spending that's happening, it's done by the guild or their bosses. That sort of. Then there are paid players, which are like sort of smaller set of players, or I mean, they are larger in numbers, but they don't have that much amount of skills. They are not kind of tied up with any of the guild itself, but they are there to earn. As soon as they see some sort of opportunity, they kind of try to gain up the skills, and they can kind of move from one type of players to other type of players. So this was something that was interesting, sort of learning out of all this journey. Then there are like different things on the way that we learn, and like I'm talking about a couple of them here itself. Like maybe you guys have learned, like you guys have kind of read the book Hooked by Neerayal, I guess, where it talks about like you give someone incentive, like you activate someone by giving them the incentive to join the system. As soon as they join the system, you kind of ask them to make a small effort. Taking an example of Facebook, like you go onto the Facebook, post a image, someone comes and like for it. That's a variable reward for you, that you are getting some sort of validation out of the system. As soon as you get that reward and validation, you kind of probably go in for more efforts, and that the cycle continues. Right? Same thing happens with any game as well. That baseline principle stays the same. Because you have bought into the NFTs, the retentions have kind of gone really, really high. For example, in our system, like the day 7 retention is 65%. That means like 1 out of the 2 player who tries out a game is playing. And that's like huge number, just because of the earning that they are making, just because the investment that they are making into these NFTs, right? And there are like variable rewards, like you can, so the page that I'm showing over here, that is a raffle page, where there is a lucky draw that's happening on an everyday basis. and like the tickets that you get for the lucky draw depends on all the different type of activities you do on the platform. Maybe sharing something, or maybe kind of doing some community tasks, or coming onto the platform and buying NFT that can, or playing a game itself that can give those tickets to you. And yeah, and you start getting variable rewards. So there is always that anxiety about, or the excitement rather, about like what I am going to get from this system. And this is the sort of last part of the hook sort of circle, which is like social proofing. If I kind of make someone to share the winnings that they have with their friends, if I kind of give them some sort of discount for like inviting their friends in the games and stuff, so that also increases the popularity of any system. So social proofing is really much important, because like people would want to talk about the things that they are doing with their friends itself. Another part of like designing a game in a particularly play to earn system kind of revolves around spending habits of the user. Probably if I would have been making a game which is just a free to play or something, I wouldn't have cared about this much. But right now, because it's a play to earn where people will have to invest some sort of money to get a bigger rewards, I need to kind of make sure that I'm talking about different parameters or frameworks that comes when you're when the money is involved, right? So first is like distributing freebies. So if you talk about all these Dream 11, all these platforms, right? When you kind of sign up there for the first time, they will give you 10 rupees to create a game, create a team. They'll be like free stocking you, so that like you get that like there is minimal activation barrier as required. Then there is a loss aversion sort of thing. So if you can see the banner over here, so I'm not so sure like how many of you are reading about crypto or NFT space and something. So there was a project called as Steppen, which like shot up massively. People having returns such as like 10x, 20x, 100x, even like in within like a week or a couple of weeks or within a month or so. And that sort of, and because NFTs, the system or economies of NFTs are created in such a way that they are limited in nature, everybody realized that, oh, I missed the train, right? And now they don't want to kind of miss the train. So that's why like this is probably a better example of FOMO itself, that I would want to kind of imply all of these things to make sure that I'm getting money out of their pockets, right? So you ensure that like there are like different tiers of gamers into the system. You can kind of reward them with different badges, and you make sure that they work hard to take those badges, and every badge has some sort of incentive attached to it. So if you do not kind of invest into the NFT of ours, probably you will get half of the reward money itself. You're not getting full of the reward money because you're using someone else's NFTs. So those sort of loss aversion mechanisms are also used when you're talking about such play to earn or kind of any sort of earning system out there. Yeah, so yeah, that's more or less I wanted to kind of talk about. And I have almost like covered very hastily through all the topics, but would love to kind of have a little bit more pinpointed questions so that I can talk in detail about the same, because we have a varied audience. I try to cover both part of the story, where like you are talking about art and what are the important things that an artist should kind of consider, and at the same point of time talked about the UX part as well. We can dive deep into each of these points in the time that's available for us. And yeah,
Vaibhav, we have a couple of questions in the chat. So
sure.
I think Rohan, previously when we were discussing the, different vector-based assets, he was asking like, what have you tried in 3D model, and like so Rohan, are you there? You want to
Yeah,
read
hey.
the question first?
Hey, hi Ron.
Yeah, and this is a question just in terms of, it's a question of production, and I'm sure you all did consider different options, but considering your assets are very 3D, and there might be a future of this being a 3D game itself, did you, I mean, why did you decide to go with the vector style? I mean, or the vector means of production?
Yeah, so that, I mean, at that point of time, like if you are building a startup, you want to kind of ship things as fast as possible. You want to get these elements as fast into hands of the users as possible. At the same point of time, because we are early stage startup, we don't have a lot of like liberty of a lot of time and money and kind of workforce as well, right? So whatever you can kind of optimize to kind of get it done really, really quickly, that you kind of go for first one. So for example, right now I'm working on a project where I can probably animate these characters and stuff. And then the next project will be to kind of make these characters 3D, and then onwards take a character animation of them as well. But to start off with, the decision is solely lies on the whatever budget you have, whatever the technology constraints you have, right? And that's how kind of the decision making goes on.
Oh, what I general question was, are you all still using Figma to animate?
Yeah, I am actually. So I do use prototypes a lot. So there is no real animation that goes on into our game right now. A lot of them are just UI animations here and there. So yeah, I mean, like there for the proper animation, probably we'll go on like a little bit code-based tool where we can animate these things and in more seamless manners. As they are NFTs, they should be dynamically animated as well. So we had done a PO, like proof of work, once for these, and then like eventually we'll kind of do it on a production level once. So that's what I am actually right now working on, trying to get animators and all of these people into the system.
Okay, nice. I'll open up if anybody else wants to ask a question. Otherwise, I do have a second one.
Thanks, Rohan. I think you can go ahead with the second question.
Yeah, I think there is Arka. Arka has raised his hand. Yeah, you can go ahead, Arka.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Okay. So I'm seeing like two things here. One is the game part of it, and one is the NFT part of it. So I wanted to ask that, what is the ratio of players who are intrinsically interested in the game part of it? I mean, if NFT was there or not there, it doesn't matter. And how many players are there? I mean, the ratio who are only interested if there is a benefit or if there is a NFT attached to it or a reward mechanism attached to it.
Okay.
So is there any stats on that?
Yeah, sure. So for us, it's like 100% people who are kind of interested into earning part of it, right? I mean, because the game itself kind of title itself as it's a earning sort of game. I mean, that's how we have marketed it. Eventually, there will be a fun-based game as well into the system. The current structure of the game itself requires you to have a very small knowledge of the crypto market, or you can kind of learn while you're playing as well. It's not like entry barrier of the sort, but because the game is structured in such manner, that people would kind of have to have some sort of knowledge around like some sort of knowledge around crypto here and there. And then like because of that, like people have a lot of motivation towards earning. But if I try to kind of answer the earlier probably questions that you mentioned, that were NFTs necessary to kind of build this game or not, right? The answer is no. Just to build a game, I don't require an NFT. What NFT helps me to do is to control my economy in a really, really smoother manner, right? So because of NFT, I have a control in terms of how much earning I can have as a gaming company. I have a control over how many players that can play into the system, because number of NFTs are equally kind of positively sort of correlated to that number of players. And and that kind of gives me to make an interesting sort of economical frameworks that we can kind of build up around the system. Like I can decide how those characters will grow. That kind of defines how the growth of the entire project will happen. So if you talk about just building the game itself, I wouldn't need an NFT to build the game, but it's more around like how do you kind of build economy out of this game? How do you kind of make sure that the economy sustain itself out of this game? And then you can, that's why you probably need these NFTs. Probably you need a blockchain based sort of a system. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for the question. Nice question. Yeah, if there is no other question, Rohan, you can probably ask.
Oh, sure. It's actually very similar to what Arka was asking about, which was when you were picking the NFT, the art. Did you all consider? I mean, how did you arrive at this theme of monsters? And because you mentioned Steppen, which has a sneaker theme.
Yeah.
And I can imagine people will get excited about that. But yeah, would be excited to know if there's a process that was followed there.
Yeah. So essentially, so I would tell you kind of what all sort of went. It was like bit haphazard because it's like very early stage, you're going really fast and stuff. But why characters and how do we kind of land on this character? So we wanted to kind of create a game which has some sort of interesting lore, some sort of interesting story that can be maintained for many different games into the future, right? We are not just creating one game, but we'll be opening up this platform for all sort of game developers, and they can kind of come and build their own games using our NFTs. So our NFTs are just a anchor point to entire ecosystem. From that, like many different games can be kind of thought about. Like right now we have a fantasy game which is like crypto fantasy, but eventually you can see a lot of like something like Flappy Bird like thing, or probably you will be able to see maybe even RPG game, role playing game sort of thing as well with these characters, right? So for that, we wanted to make sure that we have a lore which is kind of going on, like which has a lot of open ends, where we thought of like, okay, let's do something which is sci-fi. There is no reasoning behind why it is sci-fi. It's just because like at that point of time, I've been watching Star Wars a lot, as simple as that. So I've been kind of that's where kind of I got excited. I can kind of, we can talk about something which is happening outside our planet. Then few other factors to kind of in the storyline is that like humans always connect to the things where like other humans are involved. So we kind of decided to kind of give it a tone that people arrive in the future, like when kind of humans leave the earth, they arrive at certain planet, which is sort of a gamified version of the crypto market itself, or like kind of a live version of crypto market itself. And there are like a lot of powers and sci-fi things and very magical things happening on that planet, and that's where they find all these creatures. Why particularly these creatures and why particularly these coins and stuff? So we wanted to create something. Rather, our target audience was some people, like people who understands crypto a little bit. At the same point of time, they want to be, easily get introduced into the crypto. They are just enthusiastic about crypto and they want to get easily introduced into crypto. And if we kind of build cute characters, that will help them to kind of get familiarized with like a lot of these things in crypto in a better manner. So when I see this, I say very cute character of a Bitcoin, sorry, then I get to get like feel that inviting sort of nature, and I can probably relate it with a little bit better manner. Rather than creating something which is a little bit gory and all of those sort of in nature. So yeah, so that those are all different point of views that went to the system to make it to the character.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
I have a question to ask Vaibhav.
Go on.
Is there any? Can you tell me the demographics of your user roughly? The demographics of your users roughly?
Yeah. So right now, the age of these users is around like 18 to 35. People who are kind of younger audiences. In India specifically, there is a huge culture of real money gaming. Like in India, a lot of people actually play Dream 11 and they eventually get attracted to this. Reason, like a little bit sad reason for it, but reason being unemployment a lot. People have a lot of free times, people have a lot of things to do kind of on the go, and people also want a money on the sides, right? And if you can kind of earn from gaming, like there is fun as well happening at the same point of time you are earning as well. So like all these developing countries, and it's not just about India, all these developing countries have a crowd like this. So Philippines was the country where like rise of crypto games kind of like shot really up. There was a game called Axie Infinity which touched like 2 billion market cap or something back then, and that was sort of inspiring story for us as well. Although like the market is really down right now, but like people want to kind of have these sort of side things happening in their life so that they can kind of invest small amount of money into these games and try out their luck and kind of win some money back. So yeah, the demography is usually around like developing countries, 18 to 35 sort of audience people. These are like younger males mostly, but we have seen a lot of increasing participation of females as well. So yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And
That's
there is a small part. So as I explained, right? I think probably I should mention this. So as I explained, like there are like paid players, and probably the ones I described are kind of fall into the category of paid players more. But there are capital providers as well. So people who are like well-to-do in India, they, even though they don't have time to play, they are attracted towards buying NFTs and making returns out of it. So for example, I can go on buy 5 NFTs, distribute that amongst 5 players. Those players can kind of go on our platform, play the game, and give me the returns, right? So I just kind of act as a sort of an investor for for the gaming company itself. Where yeah, I'm just spending money to kind of get more users for the company. So that's also one demography, or like smaller demography rather. That's not large in numbers, but it is there, and it is like a lot more interested into such investment opportunities.
okay. Any particular challenges that you've come across so far that you can particularly highlight, maybe?
I think when it comes to money, the like first part of all the product building was